Anews. I'm Taslim, and you're watching Turkey's Diplomacy. On today's episode, we'll take a look at the top developments from Turkey and the region. Joining me on the program today are Daily Sabah's editorial coordinator, Dr. Mehmet Çelik, and Associate Professor Dr. Şuay Nilhan Açıkalın, who is an international relations professor at the Hacı Bayram Veli University in Ankara. But before we begin today's discussions, let's take a look at this news report.
Türkiye continues to emphasize its commitment to European Union accession despite long-standing challenges in the negotiation process, highlighting the importance of strong cooperation in an era of global uncertainty. Türkiye-EU relations have historically experienced fluctuations, influenced by geopolitical shifts and transformations in the international system. From the Cold War to the present day, developments in both Europe and the broader global landscape have shaped the dynamic between the two sides. While political obstacles persist, Türkiye maintains its strategic goal of EU membership, seeing it as vital for both its own future and regional stability. Dialogue remains active between Türkiye and the EU at multiple levels, with high-level dialogue meetings playing a crucial role in fostering cooperation in areas such as the economy, energy, transportation, counter-terrorism, and foreign policy. These engagements are seen as key to unlocking the full potential of Türkiye-EU relations and advancing the accession process. As the EU faces growing challenges, from economic pressures to security concerns, the need for robust partnerships has become more pressing. Türkiye asserts that its membership would contribute to a stronger and more resilient Europe, reinforcing collaboration in critical areas. Despite political roadblocks, Türkiye continues to work toward EU integration, underscoring the necessity of constructive dialogue and mutual engagement to navigate an evolving global landscape.
Welcome back to the program. Dr. Mehmet Çelik, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mark.
Dr. Mehmet, today we're going to talk about a move that the European Parliament has taken against Turkey. Now, a week ago, almost 10 days ago, the European Parliament released a report on Turkey's EU ambitions. Now, there were many things that were discussed, but the result of that meeting was that the European Union said that they're going to freeze Turkey's EU process. Why is the European Union taking such decisions? We know there's the Turkish support for the Palestinian cause. There are geopolitical issues as well that the European Union sees with Turkey and this region. So why has the European Union decided to take such strong action when at the same time it says that Turkey's importance is well known and Turkey is a great part of the European Union?
First of all, when it comes to these reports by the European Parliament, we know that historically or traditionally they have been very biased against Turkey in the past 2 decades. They will focus on Turkey's anti-terror operations. They will talk about the rule of law, the state of judiciary in Turkey. They will talk about democracy and human rights and this and that. But in most cases, we know that these are very biased reports that really, rather than understanding Turkey's position with regards to fight against terror, for example, historically, rather than understanding that Turkey has an independent judiciary, they have been very biased and politically motivated against Turkey. And this is happening despite the fact that they acknowledge Turkey's strategic importance for the European continent, but for the European Union specifically. For example, during the migrant crisis, Turkey's historic role there and the responsibility was very largely acknowledged by member states. When it comes to the geopolitical dynamics in Turkey's region that is basically neighboring the European continent, they acknowledge that when it comes to security and Turkey's role in the region, as well as the second largest army in the NATO, they acknowledge that and they voiced this importance. But when it comes to accepting Turkey, there is that block in the mindset of the European decision makers against Turkey. And this has, of course, many different, it can be analyzed at many different levels. Historically, we know that this accession process, I mean, it's been more than 6 decades that Turkey has applied for European Union membership, and you know, it has been basically put on hold for decades. Now, if the European Union wants to acknowledge Turkey's position, if it wants to accept Turkey's importance when it comes to geopolitical dynamics, when it comes to its economy, when it comes to security, it must overcome these obstacles that they have created, this barricade that they have created in their own mindsets. And this has a lot to do with ideology. European Union's ideological blocks against Turkey play a bigger role than the strategic importance of Turkey when it comes to decision-making about Turkey and Turkey's membership into the Union. We know that, you know, as cliché as it is, many consider this to be a Christian club. And, you know, and the reason why they do not want to accept Turkey is that because of its large population, because of its Muslim identity, you know, that Islamophobia plays a big role there, and that, you know, the fear that Turkey's acceptance into the Union will change their internal dynamics has a lot to do with that ideological block that they put forward, rather than more pragmatic or more strategic steps that they should take when it comes to acknowledging Turkey's importance for the Union, especially at a time when there is, you know, this transformation in the global order. I think having Turkey on their own side will be beneficial for the European Union as a country that has always been carrying with it this European identity when it comes to the historical, you know, I mean, even at the Ottoman times, the Ottoman Empire it always considered itself as a European empire rather than an Asian empire. So I think with these historical facts, coupled with Turkey's current strategic importance, turning its back to a country that is growing its influence not only in its region, but internationally, I think this is strategic mistakes and strategic lack of vision for the European countries.
Mehmet, can we call these double standards or hypocrisy? Because on one side, Turkey the European Union says, like you mentioned as well, that it's a great NATO ally and a good trade partner as well for the European Union. So how can this hypocrisy be removed? How can you know, the European Union overcome its double standards? I
don't think this will change. As much as Turkey wants to maintain that position due to both its geographical location, due to its identity, European identity, due to the very strong trade relations, strategic relations in terms of security, the European Unions or European countries' bias against Turkey is not momentary. It's not something that is dynamic and it changes from time to time. It's a very static position regarding Turkey, and that is ideological. And to change that firm ideological stance from the European side will be something very challenging for Turkey. And I don't think that will ever change, in fact.
Mehmet, last week, you know, we saw heavy diplomatic traffic in Turkey. There was the NATO foreign ministers meeting in Antalya, and then in Istanbul we saw delegations from Ukraine, Russia, Turkey, and the United States discussing how to end the war in Ukraine. Now, Gaza is also there, Mehmet. Gaza has been a focus of the Turkish government as well. I'll read a statement from the Turkish Foreign Ministry. At a time when negotiations are ongoing, Israel's widening of its attacks in Gaza weakens all efforts to establish peace and stability. Now, over 200 people were killed in only a few hours over the weekend. What can we do about this genocide now, Mehmet? Because we've seen images, we're seeing videos, we're seeing hospitals being bombed, we're seeing journalists being killed. And, you know, according to the latest information, Israel has allowed 4 to 5 trucks to enter the occupied Gaza Strip. Now, 4 to 5 trucks for 2.3 million people. Where do you see this genocide heading?
Well, unfortunately, as you mentioned, the numbers are very dark, and the numbers are increasing with the Israeli genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza and elsewhere in the occupied territories is continuing. You know, we ask ourselves, how will this end? Well, there's a few reasons why this is continuing. One is that there is an idle political position internationally when it comes to many countries around the world. Not only that this weakness of the Islamic countries or the Arab countries is encouraging Israel, but it's also strengthening its position when it comes to its own gains and own plans for the expansion. Now, what country can stop Israel, or how can we stop this? Of course, there's the supporters behind Israel that can influence the decision-making in Tel Aviv. And this is namely, of course, the United States and some of the European countries. Now, there has been some voices actually coming out from the Western countries, but it's too little too late now. You know, I mean, more than 50,000 people have killed, and the whole area has been destroyed. As you mentioned, the past few hours, you know, past few days, more than 200 people have been killed. And this is happening live. This is being streamed in everybody's cell phones, everybody's mobile phones, and the whole world is watching this unfolding, and nobody's actually putting, condemning this even very strongly. As long as the supporters do not stop from backing Israel's genocidal acts in Gaza, as long as this mindset regarding the expansion and the occupation doesn't change in Tel Aviv, I'm afraid even if there is a ceasefire today, even if there is this stop to what's happening right now today, happen in the long term, as long as two things don't change, I'm afraid that history will repeat itself. One is the mindset that thinks that it's okay to bomb children, to bomb hospitals, to bomb journalists and medics, to kill civilians. It's okay in the name of expansion, in the name of some territorial claims based on some archaic interpretation of their biblical or if their religious theological text. Unless that mindset changes, unless the international Zionist lobby stops supporting this, unless the backers from Europe and the United States don't change their position, I'm afraid this will repeat itself. And in addition to all this, I mean, if you look at Israel, it's surrounded by a number of very strong countries in the region, and the Muslim world is basically, remaining idle when this is actually taking place. There is the lack of unity, the lack of political consensus when it comes to Israel, and all these combined gives a free check or free page to Netanyahu's cabinet to carry out all these genocidal acts.
Mehmet, also there are some reports now that Palestinians will be displaced to Libya. These are some of the reports that we were seeing in the last few hours. Now, what if that happens? Because, looking at the situation right now, looking at the events that have unfolded over the past few weeks, we're clearly saying that Netanyahu is also insisting that Israel is going to, control Gaza completely. So what happens in this situation? Do you think that the end result could be the displacement of Palestinians?
Well, the whole aim is to depopulate the territory, right? So that it can be claimed by Israel, and ultimately settlements can be created there, and the territorial expansion can continue beyond even Gaza. The claims about Libya and elsewhere, they were voiced previously about Egypt and about Jordan as well. But nobody's asking Palestinians if they want to leave. And why should they leave in the first place when this is their own land for going back to thousands of years? The olive trees in the backyards of the Palestinians are older than the state of Israel itself. Now, this is not a matter of anti-Semitism. This is not a matter of being against that two-state solution. This is basically saying that, look, if you want to accept if you want to be living in peace in this region, you have to accept and acknowledge that reality about the people of Palestine. You have to acknowledge their rights to their own land. You know, you have to stop this policy of dispossession, stop this policy of violence against them, and accept 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as the capital of State of Palestine. And this is accepted internationally. And now, you know, this even Israel's encouragement and their aggressive policies, which is backed by some of the superpowers in the world, this is not even accepting that anymore. I mean, these plans about where to relocate Palestinians is, I think, they're just nonsense, because Palestinians have their own land. They don't have to seek for another land. The occupation must end so that they can actually resettle, go back to their own land. I mean, Nakba happened in 1948, and thousands of people were displaced. And now there is new forms of this displacement happening with what's going on in Gaza. And you know, you move them from one location to another, and then you go and bomb that location where they thought it was safe. And this dispossession and dislocation, displacement, will continue to happen as long as these, you know, previously when I counted about these, when I listed these four factors that is allowing this genocide to happen.
Mehmet, let's talk about Turkey's peace diplomacy. Now, tomorrow, President Erdogan is traveling to Hungary for a Turkic states summit. Last week, there were, as I mentioned earlier as well, meetings to, you know, find a solution to the war in Ukraine. Now, one thing that came out of that meeting in Istanbul was the exchange of 1,000 prisoners of war between Ukraine and Russia. Over the weekend, Turkish foreign minister was in Saudi Arabia for the second Coordination Council summit. How are you looking at Turkey's peace diplomacy, Mehmet, considering the events that we witnessed in the last few days?
Well, of course, Turkey geopolitically and geographically, in terms of its rising regional profile and international profile as a mediator, is, you know, growing very largely, and that is accepted by all parties at the moment. When it comes to the specifics of the Ukraine-Russia negotiations in Istanbul, of course, there was a lot of high hopes that maybe Mr. Putin will meet Mr. Zelensky, and maybe even Mr. Trump will come and join them, and this will maybe a consensus will be reached regarding the ceasefire. Of course, when the hopes were so high, and the fact that they didn't meet in the first day, and the second day some results were reached, but you know, this wasn't a ceasefire. Of course, there was some sort of disappointment. However, I think we look at a glass that is full empty or full half, whichever side you want to look at. And the fact that, you know, a ceasefire wasn't agreed, wasn't achieved with this meeting, that's the half side of the glass. But the fact that, you know, this exchange of prisoners and the fact that there is a platform at least established and the sides came together, this is the full side of the full side of the glass. And I think the glass itself, you know, I'm using this metaphor, but as a platform, now will trigger new platform. At least now they're talking about Vatican, or maybe some other place will, as well as Istanbul.
Switzerland, yeah.
Switzerland, as well as Istanbul, maybe hosting a new round of peace or ceasefire talks. All these show that, one, Mr. Erdogan is a key leader when it comes to this conflict, as he has both good connections with Mr. Putin as well as good relations with Mr. Zelensky. Of course, Mr. Erdogan's relationship with Mr. Trump is also key to bringing the sides together as well. And two is that diplomacy will only solve this conflict. War and continuing the armed confrontation will not bring an end to this the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, as the sides are searching for an honorable exit or an exit strategy. I think everyone should acknowledge that diplomacy will be the key to solving this issue.
Mehmet, thanks for that analysis. We'll now take a look at this news report, and we'll be right back.
Israel has agreed to allow limited amounts of food into Gaza, easing a 2-month-old blockade that has brought the enclave to the brink of famine. But airstrikes killed at least 20 Palestinians overnight after Israel announced extensive ground operations. Casualties arrived at a hospital in Khan Yunis on Monday. Palestinian health officials say more than 500 people have been killed in attacks in the past 8 days, as Israel has stepped up its military campaign, bringing the toll of Palestinians killed in its ground and air war to more than 53,000. Israel has faced mounting international pressure over the blockade on humanitarian deliveries it imposed in March, shortly before it broke a 2-month-old ceasefire. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel aimed to take control of all of Gaza and prevent Hamas from looting aid shipments. Hamas has denied involvement in looting. This warehouse containing medical supplies for Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis was also hit. Hospital director Atif Al-Hout asked how long the world would remain silent.
Today, the stock of medical solutions for patients and the stock of solutions for kidney dialysis patients are being targeted. This quite simply means that kidney dialysis patients are being sentenced to death.
Separately, residents and medics said an Israeli undercover unit who disguised themselves as displaced people killed a leader in a raid in the south. Residents said the commander, Ahmad Sarhan, clashed with the force before he was killed, and that the Israelis detained his wife and children before retreating in a bus under cover of fire from the air. Israel's military has announced a campaign dubbed Operation Gideon's Chariots, seeking to eliminate Hamas's military and governing capabilities and bring back the remaining hostages it holds. Senior Hamas official Sami Abu Zuhri said the escalating offensive would put the lives of the hostages at risk. And both sides reported no progress in a new round of indirect talks between Israel and Hamas in Qatar.
Welcome back. Let's take a look at the front page of Daily Sabah. Mehmet Çelik, this is a very important story. Obviously, yesterday we celebrated 19th May, which was the Atatürk Youth and Sports Day. Tell us a bit about this, Mehmet. What is the importance of this day and how are people celebrating this national holiday?
Well, of course, yesterday was the May 19th, the commemoration of Atatürk Youth and Sports Day. And this is the basically when the founder of the Republic, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, launched this rise for the war of independence. Of course, it is very important, and it is particularly important now because Turkey is entering its second century. And this century of Turkey vision will be built or will be carried out to the next generation by the youth of this country. And Turkey is a young republic. Turkey is a country that has a very strong young population. And actually, there is a groundswell when it comes to the youth and the youth's engagement in rebuilding or reshaping Turkey's vision for the coming centuries. I think it's a very important day, and you know, it is celebrated, of course, across the country. Yesterday, we know that even, you know, yesterday and the day before yesterday, and actually throughout the whole week, there were celebrations or events across the country, from the very little children all the way to the adults and the elderly. Everybody enjoys this day because this is a day of unity that actually made Turkey, the republic, what it is today. This is the day that ignited this unity, and I think it is important for it to be carried out to the future generations. And you know, the youth is the catalyzer of this country and the vision that this country wants to carry out to the next generation, be it with technology, with when we look at the Technofest, for example, there is this generation that is very interested, very engaged in innovation, very engaged in technology, very engaged in bringing the country to that modern state level that Mustafa Kemal Atatürk had envisioned for the country.
Mehmet, we obviously cannot ignore this picture in Gaza. People are depressed, people have no hope, people have no food. We just discussed about this, but it is difficult to ignore such a picture on the front page of Daily Sabah. I want to ask you, Mehmet, about Turkey, US to discuss Syria policies in Washington meeting. Now, this is another headline on the front page of Daily Sabah. The Turkish delegation is going to be led by Şuay Yilmaz, who is the Deputy Foreign Minister. What can we expect from this meeting, Mehmet?
Well, this meeting is basically, will discuss, it's a technical meeting that will bring the sides, the US and Turkish sides, diplomats together to discuss about the most important thing is the counterterrorism operation. So it is security and stability of Syria will be discussed in this meeting. It's a very technical meeting, will take place today in Washington, and Mr. Yilmaz will be heading the Turkish delegation, the Deputy Foreign Minister. Now, Turkey and the United States, they're both very largely engaged in rebuilding of Syria. So the fact that they are meeting, and when it comes to fight against Daesh, the remnants of Daesh terrorist group, when it comes to YPG and the PKK, as the U.S. is the main backer of that, when it comes to the legitimizing the new administration, I think these meetings are important, and they will be effective in supporting that process that will lead to reconstruction of Syria for tomorrow and for the future of Syria.
Mehmet, thanks for that analysis. We'll continue to monitor all of these stories as well in the next few days.
Thank you.
Let's take a look at this news report, and we'll be right back.
Spordan savunmaya, diplomasiden güvenliğe, bilimden teknolojiye, enerjiden eğitime, her alanda başarıdan başarıya koşuyoruz.
The Turkish government's initiative to create a terror-free country marks a historic step toward lasting peace and stability. This bold and comprehensive initiative seeks to address decades of conflict, promote national unity, and foster a future of harmony for all citizens.
Türkiye 100 yılı hedefimize varıncaya kadar bu yolculuk hiç bitmeyecek. Terörsüz Türkiye kavşağını inşallah suhuletle döndükten sonra Türkiye 100 yılı menziline çok daha hızlı ulaşacağız.
The end of terrorism would allow the nation to focus its energy on economic development, infrastructure improvement, and the well-being of its citizens. As the government continues its efforts, there is hope that the country will emerge stronger, more united, and better positioned to face the challenges of the future.
En büyük eserimiz olarak sizlere güvenliğin, huzurun, refahın olduğu, terörün kalıntısının dahi olmadığı bir Türkiye'yi inşallah emanet edeceğiz.
Welcome back to the program. Joining us now is Associate Professor Dr. Şuay Nilhan Açıkalın. She is an International Relations Professor at the Hacı Bayram Veli University in Ankara. Ms. Şuay, welcome to the program.
Hello, Umar. Thank you.
Ms. Şuay, I want to start off by discussing the Terror-Free Türkiye initiative. Tell us about that. In the last few days, we've seen that there have been many diplomatic moves from the government and from Abdullah Öcalan, who is the ringleader of the PKK terror group. Now, he had 2 visitors over the weekend as well. Please tell us more about the Terror-Free Türkiye initiative. In which direction is it going?
Thank you very much. That is a definitely historical moment in the Turkish history. And the process, just for reminding, started last year with the call of the Mr. Bahçeli's in the October. And since then, there is ongoing visits between the jailed leader Abdullah Öcalan and the DEM party delegation. And later they make the visits between the inter-party group in the parliament as well. And April was one of the milestone in this process because the President Erdogan welcomed the DEM party delegation in the presidential palace. And last week on Monday, we saw a historical call from the PKK, and they clearly say that they will later on the dissolution decision has been made in their Congress. And right now we are in the moment that we're looking for. This is not the ending, but it is a beginning of the whole, a new process within the terror-free Turkey. What we will expect in the upcoming days or upcoming months, it is more important if you ask me. The first one is that already President Erdogan and the ministers underlined that this process will be monitored by the government very closely, and the next step will be the giving up the arms and the collecting the arms both in the Iraq and the Syria camps of the PKK. And later on, the government prepared a very detailed report to president, and later it will be decision that this solution will be done in the field or not. So each steps will be bring the new steps. So we will see probably in upcoming months the more new steps, but we need to first see in the field how the dissolution will be directly reflected, the giving up the arms and basically collecting the arms. Last one, I think what the most important point is that this process is totally different from the process that been taken in the 2010, because there is no negotiation right now, and there is a clear willingness of the PKK that the dissolution decision made by the Congress.
Shwai, yesterday there was a meeting between the UK and the EU. Many important things were discussed. Both of the sides want to increase their cooperation as well. There were talks about defense cooperation, easing food trade. How are you looking at that summit? Do you think that the UK is trying to, come back closer to the EU?
Umar, today you asked me a very historic events question. The last day, the UK-EU deal definitely the one of the resetting agreement between the two sides since the Brexit takeoff. And it's clear that these agreement, if you ask me, it's not the only symbol of the closing again to each other, but a kind of the relief for the both sides citizens. Because if we look closer for the agreement, there are three important points has been signed by the two side. First, there is a trade agreement between the two sides has been negotiating for many years, and now they decided to reduce the red tape. What I mean is the red tape burdening the British businessmen towards the exporting food and drink to the European countries, and it's important because United Kingdom is one of the biggest trade partner of the EU. Second one, definitely the defense pact. It is expected, especially after the Russian-Ukrainian war, and just reminding 2 months ago, there is a big summit held in London, and it said there was a clear signal that there will be a new defense pact between the two sides to enhance the security cooperation in upcoming months. And the last one, I think it's also important for the youth generation, which is the taking back to the Britain in the Erasmus program and other mobility program that given by the European Union like Erasmus. And it's also bringing that the mobility between the two generations. They say that it will be a kind of a new initiative for upcoming generation to see the EU and the British relations in a more positive manner.
Mehmet, I want to come back to you. Since we're talking about Europe, and my previous question was about the PKK. Now, we've also seen terror activities in Europe led by the PKK, especially in Germany and in Sweden. Since Turkey is now trying to end this phase of terrorism, the phase which continued for over 40 years, what sort of actions should European countries take when we're talking about the PKK? We saw the FETÖ terror group as well in Europe and its actions. Now, what do you believe the European countries should do in order to stem this threat and to end it for once and for all?
Well, just for our viewers, we should always, unfold the PKK reality. PKK is not a terrorist group that only functions within Turkey and it's a threat to only Turkey's territorial integrity as well as security and stability, etc. First of all, it functions in northern Syria, northern Iraq, and some parts of Iran. But in addition to this, we know that, and it is reported by the European institutions, that the PKK functions actually within European borders. What I mean by that is their financial activities, some even recruitment as well as training activities take place within European borders. Sweden has many reports regarding this. Europol has a lot of every year it's in its annual reports, we see a part allocated to PKK activities within Europe. When it comes to even narcotics, the PKK is an organization, or it's a terrorist group that has, uses narcotics to gain financial support. So the European Union has turned a blind eye for many decades to these activities within its within its borders, despite the fact that Europe lists PKK as a terrorist group. Why did this happen all these years? First of all, that's a big question mark. Why did they turn a blind eye when the group is listed as in the list of terrorist organizations, when the PKK always targeted Turkey, an ally to Europe, a NATO member? When they are turning, why did they turn a blind eye to this homegrown, in a way, terrorist organization within European capitals or within European borders? Now that the PKK is coming to an end, hopefully, what will this mean for Europe? How will they use this as a device that can be used politically against Turkey, for example? I hope that they will actually come to an understanding that will be in parallel with Turkey's position regarding PKK's threat. Not that it's only recruiting its citizens actually to join the lines of the PKK, but now that the PKK will lay down the arms, what will happen to this financial infrastructure, or what will happen to this recruitment structure within Europe, and how will this radical elements be integrated into European countries, or how will Europe reposition itself when it comes to Turkey's security concerns? I think everybody knew from the day one that the PKK carries out its political legitimacy efforts, its financial activities, it received military support from the Western countries. Everyone knew that, but turning a blind eye to it for its own interest showed the double standards actually from the European side when it comes to fight against terrorism.
Dr. Şuay, my final question is to you. Former President Biden, has been diagnosed with cancer. Now, obviously, that is a sad event. That is a sad story to realize that the former president has been diagnosed with cancer. Now, Trump is the new president. If I ask you, who has led the United States in a better way? Was it President Biden, or is it Donald Trump, considering the global crises that we're seeing unfold in today's world?
Thank you, Umar. Of course, two presidents comes from the two distinct political parties, which makes main differences for their political position, especially towards the global crisis. But for the Biden area, if you ask me, it's full of disappointments for both domestic politics and also the international relations. He left two wars ongoing, both in the north and, of course, in the Palestine. And especially, normally, Democrats represent a different position when it comes to the humanitarian issues or the conflict resolution issues. However, we couldn't see during the Biden era any attempt or initiative to make peace between these both wars, especially in the Gaza. It was totally humanitarian crisis that he had been seeing and experiencing, but basically he's just supporting the Israel's and the Israel violation of the human rights over there. On the other hand, in the Ukrainian issues, he never initiated any kind of the peace process or any attempt to talk with the President Putin for any feasible ceasefire over there. And more interestingly, during the Biden eras, his relations with the colleagues, other leaders, are quite limited. And during his presidency, we never see the direct contact with any world leaders to solve any regional or the global crisis. But in contrast, Trump seems to be very fast getting into the peace process in the different part of the world. Maybe there not be any, right now, there is no any concrete reason or any concrete results from the peace initiatives, but it's clear that he has the personal initiative both in the Ukraine war and the Palestine. But of course, these two interpretations also reflect some other trade relations and the economic relations between the America and other countries. There's a totally different case, but we will see, because right now we are in just the fourth month of the Trump presidency, and he's still a long way to go to the years.
Dr. Şuay Nilhan Açıkalın, thank you for being on the program. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Dr. Mehmet Çelik, thank you for being on the program.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure to listen to your analysis.
Thank you.
And that wraps up this edition of Turkey's Diplomacy. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back soon with more insights.